We're at Reid Highway, Alexander Interchange. It's a full diamond interchange for on-off ramps and a bridge over Alexander Drive. Whatever's been stripped of vegetation or new embankments now require respread of topsoil and replanting. So I've stripped topsoil and mulched all the vegetation. So see over here is topsoil stockpile and mulch stockpile. Before they undertook topsoil removal, they did a weed identification. There were certain sections they had to remove to spoil because it was too weedy. The biggest issue is traffic management, maintaining these stockpiles in a reasonable position. Later in the year, they'll be looking at planting this project. You've got very sandy soil that drains very well or too well, making sure everything gets established prior to next summer. They identified a couple of areas which were potentially dieback affected, and it was agreed that that soil could be buried quite deeply in their roadway embankment. Over this way is the bush forever, just behind their chain link fence, so you can see that this vegetation hasn't been touched. We're on Reid Highway westbound. What we're looking at is where we come from the shoulder into the batter, because we had to cut in a V-drain for another metre or two. So all we've done is sort of blend in as best we could, and what that does is saves us cutting into this batter, removing all this vegetation for the sake of changing this batter slightly to conform with a 1 in 3 batter. In the foreground here, we're looking at the retention basin. The whole project's drainage drains into this basin. As you can see, the topsoil has been respread, ready for planting around the basin. They have managed to save one big mature tree. Most of the other vegetation either had to go because of the roadworks or wasn't necessarily worth the effort of keeping.
Today we're doing direct seeding of the Reid Alexander interchange. We've got 2 different mixes. I'm doing the green mix, which is a verge mix, which is the low shrubs to go within 3 metres of the verge. Then we've got intermediate frangible stuff for another 6 to 9 metres, and then we've got the tree plantings up at the top. The seeds have all been treated with either smoke or scarification as appropriate and mixed with sand as a bulking agent to facilitate spreading the stuff out. We use sand a little bit damp so that it holds it together when we're spreading it out. You have to wait for the first rains to trigger the weed germination, then you have to come in and kill off all the weeds. A week after that, then you do the seeding. This is quite large. Some seeds, there's 8,000 per gram. They're tiny little microscopic things. Did surveys of all the local bush. It's very important to get things that are native to the local area. These are the standard drawings supplied by the client, the different treatments that have been used on all of the batters, and I've used my own colour coding, showing where the seeding and planting is to go. There's quite a number of different treatments, and you can see on the drawing here there's very narrow strips along all of the verges. The green mix, and that's in the bags with the green tags, and I've also got the blue mix, which is in the bags with the blue tags.
What we're doing here is a wetland basin. This basin would have up to 15,000 plants put in it when we're finished. Paperbarks, as most people know them, will be the sort of dominant species mixed in with sedges. We put a mix of wetland species, sedges, melaleucas, kunzias. They can take wet conditions, but they can also take dry conditions. So if it does get saturated, they'll survive, and if it dries out, they'll be okay. We use natural species of plants that occur in this area because they're most suited to this type of soil. These are the sedges, and yes, you can see there's nice root development, and that's ready to go. And this is the fertiliser tablets. They're not high in nitrogen and won't burn the roots of the native plants. These basins serve as nutrient stripping areas. Having it thick with plants, they take the nutrients out of the water table, which stops it finding its way into the Swan River, which is under a lot of pressure from too many nutrients.
Today we're at Reid Highway, Alexander Drive, where we did the revegetation work. back in winter a few months ago, and I'm doing the round of monitoring today. You can see here there's a lot of little germinants starting to come up. That's a Calathemnus. It's come from direct seeding. It'll grow into a nice shrub, 2 or 3 metres tall, hopefully. Canidia prostrata. So the first thing I do when I get to a monitoring site is take a photo of the marker which has the quadrant number written on it, and then I take a photo of the quadrant looking from this point. If I have trouble finding where the quadrants are, I've got my little mobile mapper. It's got all the coordinates stored in it within about a metre and a half. So then I go to my monitoring spreadsheet and it lists all of the species that are supposed to be in here, whether they've been seeded or planted, and this site is not actually seeded. Here we are out on Reid Highway, a few years on from when we were here, and we're just having a look at the progress. This batter here is particularly pleasing. We've got good growth of native plants. We've had very few weeds come up in this section. This area here was both direct seeded and planted, and also we've had a lot of natural recruitment. It's good to see that the plants are bearing seed. We're getting to the stage now where the whole site will just naturally regenerate. We only planted this area, we didn't direct seed it compared to the other side, and I think you can see that the results here aren't quite as good. I would have expected to have a broader cover if we'd seeded the area as well. There's a lot of sedges. When we get some significant rain, they'll all regreen. This is a sedge that has been quite dry and brown, and you can see it's starting to come green now. I expect that'll be typical of most of the sedges in here. Over there's a principal shared path that went in the year after we'd done the revegetation here. The batter on that side did get affected a lot by construction work over there, and also there was a lot of uncontrolled drainage of water down there. You can see they've put a lot of rocks in there where the water comes down, and they've put a concrete strip to divert the water. We have planted this subsequently with a lot of ground covers and stuff. They're a year or so behind the rest of the vegetation here. Melaleuca or paperbark. I'm pretty pleased overall with this batter. It's got a pretty high plant density. Here you can see we've got the lower shrubs closer to the road. This batter here has gone particularly well, and I think in this case it's because we've had remnant vegetation just up the top, and we often find that we get better success rates where there's existing vegetation. This area here should really just be mulched, so this and a few other gelatin wax around here will have to come out. Things that contributed particularly to our successes here, the civil contractor mixed the mulch with the topsoil. Weed control that we've required has been fairly minimal. Often along a roadside you'll see that there's just one dominant species. Here we've got pretty good diversity. If you plant it, you just get the number of plants that you planted, whereas if you seed, you've got the capability of getting thousands and thousands of plants. The mulch and topsoil mixture, plus the native plants, has really given the bank stability. I think the whole area is now at the stage where it will be self-regenerating from here on, and will require minimum maintenance.